It's a blessing to be here this afternoon, and it has been a tremendous journey to be a part of in this work around health equity in the state of Connecticut. Without a doubt, it's been an incredible journey to start to engage and embrace many of the learnings that we have had since we have been involved in this work. And I can say that part of the learning is based on the tasks and skills that we've learned, but a lot of the learning is something that becomes embedded along the way. So as we spend time together today, I want to share with you some of the things that I've learned in the course of this work, and then I also want to share some of the messages that we've come up with as we begin the next phase of our work. I'm really thankful for Pat Baker. It's been a tremendous journey and partnership and collaboration, because when it comes to collaboration, you really want the opportunity to grow from those that you partner with. And this too has been an incredible experience for my organization and the foundation, in that we both have had an impact on shifting our organizational cultures and our approaches. And so that's also the blessing of having different kinds of relationships with different kinds of people and partners. And so I celebrate the opportunity to be here today. Just to give you some background, you have on your table a little postcard, Jesus as a transformational leader. Yes, I'm a minister. And it's an amazing thing that this ministry thing has ended up coming together for me as a social justice kind of person. And for some people you would say, yeah, that stuff kind of does go together. And it's amazing that life has a way of weaving these things together for us. And so this postcard is something that we sent to our network as a part of the Lenten season through the Conference of Churches. The Conference of Churches is a 112-year-old faith-based organization that reaches a network of over 1,000 faith communities in the state of Connecticut. And so when we look at leadership in these faith communities, we recognize that in the best of all possible worlds, we sure do hope that faith leaders are indeed transformational leaders. Because if a faith leader is not a transformational leader, that faith leader is dead. And so is their context. And so we really, as an organization, try to work with bringing together transformational leaders. Because of our work with the Connecticut Health Foundation, I can say without a doubt, as our organization recently went through strategic planning, we recently changed the mission of our organization, which really has a lot to do with this work, and you see it on that postcard. We engage transformational leaders to create a healthy and just community. And that has a lot to do with our work with the Connecticut Health Foundation. When we first experienced the Connecticut Health Foundation 10 years ago with one of the first rounds of grants, which was looking at racial and ethnic health disparities, it was a time when a lot of us didn't really know what it was. And we were looking at it through one particular lens. And what I want to share with you today is that the lens has a way of shifting, the paradigm has a way of shifting, especially if we want to be effective. And so that's why I wanted to share that postcard with you, so you could see our work as an organization. I'm adjusting so I can slightly see the screen a little bit. As an organization, in our work, I want to first talk about our experience with this thing called transformational leadership. Without a doubt, the energy in this room has a lot to do with transformation, doesn't it?
Yes.
You know, there's all kinds of leadership trainings that people could experience. We've all heard about the various types of leadership training someone could sign up for. But what's powerful about this work is you're getting the opportunity to learn more about health equity, but there's also something that's happening to each one of you in this context of relationship, in this context of learning. Without a doubt, the seeds that are being planted are transformational, aren't they?
Yes.
How can you be in this program and not personally change? We do ultimately change from the experience. And think about it, how are we changing? Is it just because we have lectures or we read materials? No, a lot of it has to do with the interactive relationships between people. And so in our work over the course of the last couple of years, we're starting to see in my organization that this work around health equity has a lot to do with transformational leadership. without a doubt, if you're going to enter into this work with authenticity and integrity, you too will end up being changed by it. So, you know, we've all worked in the human service context, many of us, and you can take on certain kinds of projects and not have it be personal. Isn't that true? Mm-hmm. There are a whole lot of tasks you can do in the human service context. Do your work, accomplish your tasks, and not take it personal. As a matter of fact, in my former life, I used to work for the Department of Children and Families. And so in my experience there, part of the learning some 20 years ago was, don't get personally involved with the work. To be professional is not to be personal. How many of us remember that paradigm? Mm-hmm. Don't get involved, don't be personal, don't let it really affect you. But when it comes to this work called health equity, as we're seeking to change, that Gandhi phrase is so important. We really do want to be the change if we're going to have an impact on producing health equity in the state of Connecticut. And so that's why I want to look at a couple of the key points. To be a transformational leader, you've got to be somebody who starts to embody this thing, don't you? How can you be in this kind of program and not start to think about your own health in a different way? Yes, we're learning information, but we have to start to think about our own health in a different way. So as transformational leaders, we start to embody this thing called health, don't we? Yes. I mean, think about your own family. Don't you talk to your family members differently about when they're going to the doctor or how they get health care and how they get access to the system and what kind of services they might actually receive? It suddenly opens up your eyes where it's not just something you learned as information. You are a transformational leader now. Therefore, everything you do is living in this word. In your work with health equity, it's not just when you come here to these sessions, is it? It's every day, it's every opportunity, and that's part of what we learn in this work around transformational leadership and health equity. Also, what we've learned is without a doubt this work is about engagement, because if we're going to really have an impact in a place like Connecticut, the land of steady habits, we've got to be about engagement. Getting along with all kinds of people, bringing them along with us, being partners with them, that we might have an impact. How many of us have had the experience of singing to the choir? We're all in the same room, we're all talking the same language, we're all very passionate. We all know that we are the ones who are right, and the rest of the world is wrong. Well, in a place like the state of Connecticut, you can have that little room and feel very comfortable being with your friends who all agree with you and speak your language. But then when you take that same language someplace else, it falls on deaf ears. Have you ever had that experience? It's almost like you walk in the room and the air comes out because people are like, oh no, here she comes again. We know what she's going to talk about. And so if we're really going to have an impact on shifting public will or changing a place like the state of Connecticut, part of transformational leadership is finding a way to engage all kinds of people. Now granted, as leaders, we know that we could have a specialty in engaging people just like us. You could have that specialty engaging people just like you. I want people on the team that are just like me, that talk like me, that walk like me, that get along with me, that agree with me. I'm going to find a network of people just like me, and that's going to be my movement. Will we be able to transform Connecticut with a whole bunch of people with wild glasses on that hang out with me? No, we're not. Although I might feel really good and have a lot of fun, but the reality is we're not going to really have an impact if we only engage people like us. So part of what we've learned without a doubt in this work called transformational leadership is we've got to be good at engaging all kinds of people in this work, finding a way to translate this information. And finally, when it comes to this thing called transformational leadership is not something that happens once. Oh, I was transformed 10 years ago when I first entered. I'm the class of 2006. I was transformed then. Already was transformed. No, transformational leadership means you're always changing. You're always transforming. The more you know you don't know. The more you know, the more you know you don't know. So transformational leadership means that you have to find a way to always push the envelope in your own leadership development. If you are going to be a really good transformational leader, you have to find a way to be uncomfortable most of the time.
Yeah.
Uncomfortable. Being in uncomfortable situations, feeling that you're being pushed outside of your comfort zone, feeling like a weirdo when you walk into certain spaces, finding a way to translate your language. That's what it is to be a transformational leader, that always you're recognizing you've got to grow, you've got to push yourself out of your comfort zone, you've got to find new ways to communicate, new ways of getting along with different types of partners that you might have the greatest impact. So let me give you a little context for a moment as we think about our shared work together. And I must say, of course it's really nice to be with you all because, you know, we're the same. It's really great to be in here, but, you know, we've got to get out and get with other people. So when we think about this context that we've been called to work in, here we are in the state of Connecticut. Connecticut. This is New England. New England. Connecticut, a place of colonization. As a context, historically, being colonized is a mindset of the state of Connecticut. We're in Connecticut, little bitty state. You can cover most of it in about 2 hours. But yet in this little bitty state, it's 168 or 169 towns on any given day. Connecticut. An amazing thing about Connecticut is with this 168 or 169 towns, see what's funny about Connecticut? It's written down some places the name of the town, but on the map it says something else. So like for example, you can go up to the northwest corner and drive around and say, where is Winstead? No, it's Winchester. But it's Winstead. The people call it Winstead, but it's Winchester on the map. There's lots of places like that in this place called Connecticut. And then another thing about Connecticut is one of the things that real Connecticut people pride themselves in is we are the land of steady habits. What is a steady habit? Now we know a habit is usually something that's pretty well established, right? A habit. A habit means you do it regularly. But Connecticut wants you to know, no. We don't just have habits. In Connecticut, we have steady habits. So as change agents, do you think you're in an easy place when you're trying to do change or transformational leadership in a land of steady habits? This state prides itself in being the land of steady habits, and you each have the audacity to try to be change agents in a land of steady habits. Can't you tell you're going to irritate people? It's contrary to the very culture of the state of Connecticut. And also let's think about context in the state of Connecticut. 168, 169 communities, of which each one is run individually. We don't have a regionalized system. We all have our own individual governments. And when you think about this thing called diversity in the state of Connecticut, the land of steady habits, don't you know in the 168, 169 towns in the state of Connecticut, there's only about 18 or 19 where you'll run into a cluster of people of color? Think about it. The people of color in the room will fill you in later on, but there's some towns they won't ride through easily.
Darien. Oh, no.
Sorry. In the state of Connecticut, there are many communities where you don't have to run into any people of color at all. And if a person of color happens to be there, people in that town stop and look, because you cannot be from here. You must not be from here. 168, 169 communities, and yet only about 18 are communities where there are a significant number of people of color. Let me break it down. Places like Hartford, Waterbury, Danbury, Middletown, Bridgeport, New Haven, Willimantic, New London. You might find a few in Torrington, Bridgeport, Norwalk, Bloomfield, Windsor, Meriden, New Britain, Waterbury, East Hartford.
I know there's 2 people called their
But you all understand, so there's 169 towns, and we all easily could recite the places where there are people of color easily in the land of steady habits. Now let me break this down a little bit more for context, just so you can see the holy boldness and the audacity and the innovativeness of this group of people in this room that's trying to take on change in this land of steady habits. 169 communities, 18 of which have clusters of people of color. In the rest of the communities, outside of those 18 or 19 or 20 on any given day, the 169 towns, many of which don't have to mix with others. Let me break it down. In the state of Connecticut, this little bitty state that's only about 2 hours. Like when you go someplace like Texas, people will drive an hour for dinner. Not in Connecticut. In Connecticut, there is a 20-minute rule. In the state of Connecticut, let me just break it down. I'm going to a meeting. Where is the meeting? Oh, for example, Hartford. Well, we'll go down to Meriden. But Hartford to New Haven, that's like, wow, that's a trip. That's 40 minutes. Hello. Hartford to Waterbury, it's 30 minutes maybe. See what I'm saying? 20-minute rule in the state of Connecticut. So in other words, people don't really travel the whole state regularly. So therefore, we recognize it's a pretty isolated state, isn't it? So the people of color are pocketed in certain cities. And let me break it down and make it plain. How long would it take you to take a bus from, let's say, Danbury to Willimantic in the state of Connecticut?
3 hours.
They don't go.
Okay. Couple days, you might be able to make it. Oh, you can't do that in one day because you have to stop in Hartford. Maybe the next day you could get the bus from Hartford to Willimantic. It's only a state that's, 2 hours in total. So can you see how we are isolated? There's an isolated mindset in the state of Connecticut. And also we recognize that in the state of Connecticut, there has been a shift in this land of steady habits where the cities used to be bustling enterprises where people would come into the cities and go shopping and mix with others and see all kinds of different people and see others. But now we have gotten rid of cities and we've created little mini homogenized malls out in the suburbs. So you never have to drive into Hartford or Waterbury if you don't want to, because now you've got Evergreen Walk or Blueback Square, these other little villages where you don't have to come in and mix with others. Have I painted a picture for you, reminded you of this place called Connecticut, the land of steady habits? So why am I going down this path? Because in the state of Connecticut, this issue called racial and ethnic health disparities, for many people in those 169 communities, it does not affect them at all. Racial and ethnic health disparities, I don't know any racial people. There are no racial people in Goshen, Connecticut. They'll go up to the one, Sam, do you have any problems? And Sam's just trying to get along. Sam's like, no ma'am, I have no problem. There's no problem for Sam. So therefore, see, Sam doesn't have a problem. He's been a friend of the family for years. There's no problem for racial people. Sam doesn't have a problem. And so here we are in the state of Connecticut taking on something very important. Yet those of us who are in this field know that there are issues, there are disparities in outcomes. People do not have equal access to health care. People do not have equal outcomes in their health care. And we recognize that the people of color that we are called to serve as all people are not having the same health experience. And yet it's only in those 18 communities. So we're taking on an issue in a place called Connecticut. And in order to pass legislation, shift public will, or shift policy, how are we going to do it just with people of color? Or people like us that all get along and we like each other. There's not enough of us in the state of Connecticut, the land of steady habits. And so in order for us to have change and impact, we have to find ways to develop partnerships with diverse people. And that's what's really challenging and pushing in this work. So now I have my little reminder for us. Those of us who are social justice types, advocates, we love a good rant. The world is wrong. It's not right what's happening to people of color right now in the state of Connecticut, and y'all are racist, and you need to change. Is that really going to work in the state of Connecticut, where there are not enough people that know people of color that have to cross the line and mix with others? No. And so therefore, in order for us to have impact in this work, we have to come up with new strategies in a place called Connecticut. Because when we're in this room by ourselves, we can be really comfortable, we can speak a common language, we can agree with each other, we can feel we can have impact. But if we're going to have impact in a place like the state of Connecticut, we have to find a new way to engage other people. And I had that button, the personal becomes political. We have to look within ourselves and think about, why are we in this work? Why have we personally decided to be in this work? Because as Elizabeth talked about the need for tenacity, you've got to have a passion beyond it just being something to do. It's got to have meaning to you. It's got to resonate with you. It's got to go beyond just a program, because it's got to be something you can be committed to for the long haul. And so if you're truly committed to change happening, that means you as a transformational leader have to find new ways to change so you can deliver the mail and you can bring the message in rooms where other people might not get in. And that's part of what this kind of training is all about, teaching all of us how to get into some different rooms, isn't it? With a message that different kinds of people can hear. Because if we don't have a way of communicating with different ears and different audiences, we won't have an impact. And so I like the phrase I heard from Heidi along the way, because she's worked with us as we were working on the Leadership Council. Is it more important for you to be right or effective? Oh, that's so painful. And so I stand here admitting I've been pushed, because I used to like to work the way I worked. I liked being in my comfort zone, but in order for me to have impact, I've had to release some of my comfort zone so I can go in different rooms and have a different kind of impact. And that's what we've learned over the course of the last couple of years in this work around health equity and finding new language. And so in our work, we've been looking at, did I progress fast? Okay, there I go. We've been talking about leading change, and we had an opportunity to present down in Baltimore and talk about what we learned from this work. Our structure for the work, in order to come up with the messages, as some of you can recall from last year, is looking at some key elements, where we're looking at capacity, we're looking at collaboration, and we're looking at building that leadership council and really truly getting counsel from different ears and different types of people, so we could come up with messages that are really going to resonate with a diverse population. Part of what we learned from this work is that adaptive leadership that Pat talks about. How many of you like jazz? And I'm not just talking about Kenny G jazz. That's not, you know what I'm saying? I'm not talking about that. For those that don't know, that's Miles Davis. And part of what his genius was his ability to do improv, to just jump in with genius and recreate on the spot, on the fly, based on the rhythm of the experience at that moment. That's what adaptive leadership is all about. It's jazz. It's not like you have a set script and you can go with it all the time. You've always got to be working to figure out what the opening is, how to make it work, how to zig and zag in the midst of the situation. So part of what we've learned in this work around creating messaging and working with different audiences, a lot of it has been jazz. And for you as transformational leaders, a lot of it will be improvisation. Paying attention to the temperature, getting ready to change the message on the fly, finding the right partners to come in at the right time. Because if you think you have a set strategy that's going to work all the time in the same kind of way, you're wrong. See, that's pop music. Set little tune. We got one little tune, we got 5 words, it's going to go like this all the time. No, this is jazz. And if you know anything about real jazz, like Miles Davis, Coltrane kind of jazz, it means that you could see them 5 nights in a row. And it's going to be different, and it's going to be evolving. And part of how it evolves is based on the partners that are in the room creating that music and creating the atmosphere. And they're also going to be feeding off the audience that's in their midst. It's jazz. So this experience of messaging is not pop music. So as we look at the messages, it's not like you memorize them and then you say, all the time. No, it's not going to work like that. It's to understand the concept so that way you can innovate when you're in the midst of the situation, knowing what it is that you need to pay attention to. And so our first phase was just to look at this thing called collaboration, because our strength comes with working with different kinds of partners where we can have an impact because we're learning, we're hearing things differently. And in that collaboration, if it's going to be true, we recognize sometimes collaboration can be frustrating because you're working with different people. How can different folks of different points of view all go in the same direction? Sometimes you have to find a way to let go of certain kinds of things, choose your battles, find a way to agree to disagree, find ways to focus on different strengths in order to achieve a goal. That's what collaboration is all about. In my journey in this work, part of it was for us, even the shift of what it means to really be in a trusting kind of relationship with different kinds of partners. And for those of us who are advocates, part of the work is to build up trust with unique partners in this thing called advocacy and the work. In order to achieve the goals, sometimes you'll have to work with people you never ever thought you would work with. And you're going to have to trust them because you understand where they're coming from. And that creates a certain kind of harmony. And then next, we look at, when it comes to being in that kind of group, what it means to truly have counsel from different kinds of people. How can you listen and truly hear and get the best counsel and advice from different types of leaders that understand their field and their context, because that's where they're coming from. And so in our work with the Leadership Council, we had different leaders that worked with us that helped us come up with the messaging strategy. And what was powerful was by creating an atmosphere where we could hear from the leaders based on their context, we were able to hear how certain things are going to work in their arena. It's not based on our arena, what would resonate best in our context. It's based on what's going to resonate best in their context. And remember, we're looking to shift public will in the state of Connecticut. So this is not just a human service or a healthcare initiative. It's across disciplines where you have to have different partners working with you that are looking at it based on their own self-interest and their point of view. And then as we came together, we had to start looking at this thing called messaging to better understand what is messaging all about. It's finding a way of having a language that will have impact, that will resonate with different groups of people. It's finding a way to deliver a message where you won't be turned off immediately. You know, for so many of us, if we come the way that we've always come in our small group, the people that we're used to talking to, we can't be heard. And I have to say, it's probably one of the most challenging things for me as I've gone on this journey, because I've been working with human service professionals and government professionals and faith-based professionals for a very long time, and I'm used to talking a certain way. You know, we all understand. But if I'm going to be in other contexts and have an impact, I have to change my language and I have to change my approach, or I'll be tuned out before I have a chance to bring forth a message. And so in this work, by having messaging, by getting good counsel from diverse leaders, we've been able to see what it is to cultivate the seeds of self-interest to ultimately harvest a movement. Now, how many of you have heard of Saul Alinsky and the principles of community organizing? And so for many of us who remember that community organizing mindset, there are certain approaches that people are used to using, which oftentimes is organize people, organize money, let's have a protest, let's put somebody on the hot spot, and let's demand that they do something. We've known that model of community organizing, haven't we? Mm-hmm. But these days you have to do something different, especially in a place like Connecticut. If you try that approach in a place like Connecticut, you might get to do it once, but you're not getting back there again. And in order for us to have impact in a place like Connecticut, we've got to build partnerships and have a strategy that will allow us to have longevity so we can actually shift public will. The way we have an opportunity to do that is by planting seeds and building relationships based on the self-interest of the partners that work with us. Now, for some people, this idea of self-interest is very uncomfortable. For me as a faith leader, it's very uncomfortable. When I was first learning community organizing, self-interest, you mean to say people only do things because it's in their self-interest? They don't just do it because they're generous. They don't just do it because they're good. They don't just do it because it's the right thing. And I could prune up really over that whole idea because I just think people should do things because it's right. But if you want an opportunity to build a partnership, sometimes you have to do it based on what is in their self-interest. All right, thank you so much. We appreciate that. And so that's what this messaging is about, and that's what we learned from the partners in the Leadership Council. And so through our work, we developed the Alliance for a Stronger Connecticut. That's the phrase that we're currently using to describe this work that we're doing. Building bridges to better health. The bridge metaphor is something that works effectively in this context because it helps people see the power of connections. And this is the initial phase of how we're beginning to frame the message of what it would mean to have a multidisciplined partnership of people coming from different points of view. And so in this work that we've been sharing and through the Leadership Council, we've discovered that we need to organize in order to build the movement from some specific disciplines. So our goal is to bring together leaders that are from the business community, the health community, healthcare, health context community, education, and general community leaders. It's a leader-to-leader strategy, and our goal is to reach them right where they are so they can reach the people that they serve or work with, so that way we can have an impact on public will. How many of you have ever read the book, The Tipping Point? If you haven't, it's something to definitely look at, because the more people you start to reach, it starts to shift how people start to hear things. And so this leader-to-leader strategy is based on the notion that by getting leaders together, reaching them with the message, they can have an impact on the community that they serve. Think about it. Imagine if you could reach all the pastors in one place. Each pastor has a reach of maybe 200 to 1,000 to 5,000 people. In the city of Hartford alone, there's 200 faith communities. Imagine reaching those pastors. Imagine the impact. Imagine the possibility of a tipping point. So you start to see the power of having a leader-to-leader strategy. And so in this work, we know that our work is in bringing these different leaders together so they can start to have an effect. That's how we work. Now we're going to look at the different contexts and the messaging that we're using in those particular fields. First of all, we're going to look at the business community and what's in their self-interest. And once again, it was challenging for me to hear some of these things because I'm not used to hearing that message, but I think about the bank president that was sitting in the room with us and some of the other business leaders, a corporate CEO, and how he looked at health. Very different point of view than those of us that want to look at things as right. The bottom line for the business community is indeed the bottom line. How can we improve costs? How can we reduce healthcare costs? How can we have healthier employees so we have a healthier workforce and we can reduce maybe the time it takes to have an impact? Do we talk to the corporate CEO about race? Does it matter? He wants all of his employees to be healthy so his bottom line will be effective. Will he engage in the movement because he cares about his bottom line? He will engage in work because he wants his bottom line to be impacted. And thus we have him working as a partner. Now granted, it may not be our first choice, that that's why he signed up in that kind of way. But when business leaders get on board and they start to look at reduced healthcare costs or having better programming within their organization to impact the health of their employees, now they are working with us to reduce racial and ethnic health disparities. And so when it comes to the business community, they want to look at being a part of a stronger Connecticut. They want a Connecticut that makes them proud, a Connecticut where they're productive, a Connecticut where they have impact, a Connecticut where they reduce costs, and they will work on a movement such as this. Then, in Connecticut, we know we have our challenges with education, don't we? Yes. But we recognize that if we impact education leaders, we can have an impact on the health of the children that are in all the schools in the state of Connecticut. Look at the leadership impact. But if we were to say to all the educators in the state of Connecticut, you need to look at racial and ethnic health disparities because the children of color in your schools are having different health outcomes and you need to pay attention because it's the right thing to do. They don't have time to take on another thing because what's the priority in the state of Connecticut for educators? What are those letters?
Scores.
CMT, scores. And so we have to frame the message based on what's in the best interest of the health educators. And so for the health educators, their point of view is healthy kids that are in the classroom will have better test scores, and that will have an impact on the healthcare outcomes of the students that are in their midst. And so when we look at the healthcare point of view, one of the asks that we're looking for healthcare providers, educators, is that they might have healthcare centers within their schools. That way they can have an impact on the health outcomes of the students. Why would we want them to have healthcare in the school? We know it's to reduce health disparities, but also it's so healthier kids will have higher test scores. And so that's in their self-interest. Next, when we look at the health continua, this was challenging because health in some ways is looking at things from the business standpoint, of course, but also healthcare is looking at things from the health standpoint. And so the message for the health people in the health arena is, how can I focus on what I really got into this work for? What's in their best interest? It is the bottom line, but also it's making sure that the health of a few or the health issues of a few doesn't affect the health of all. And so by working on this work together, they have an ability to reduce poor healthcare outcomes for those that they might be seeing by being a part of the work as well. And so for those in the healthcare arena, we're looking at things like universal healthcare and that every family will have a family doctor, and that way we can reduce the poor healthcare outcomes in the health arena. Why would they care about this? It helps them reduce costs and the waste of time that they might experience with things working as they have. And then finally, we go to the community arena, where when we look at community leaders, pastors or grassroots organizers, PTAs, PTOs, people that are working in the community, the bottom line is, if people are healthier in your community, they can show up and be engaged in the work of the community. So why would they join in the movement? Because by working with people in the community for them to have good health care outcomes, that will improve the outcomes of the other community work that they're engaged in. And so that's our way of looking at the various healthcare issues in order to reduce health disparities by engaging leaders based on their bottom line. And so by working together, the goal is that we can engage leaders across the various disciplines in the state of Connecticut where we can have a broader reach, a broader impact, a way of opening the conversation, and a way of affecting the health outcomes of people of color across the state and all people in the state of Connecticut. Because ultimately, we want a healthier state of Connecticut for all people. So it's another way of using language to talk about this work. And so I'm going to pause at that place and imagine the impact that we each could have by being agents in this work, where we're good at getting in different rooms and explaining why people from different points of view could work with us to impact the health of all people in the state of Connecticut. And so I'm going to pause at this place and I'll give you some time for some questions.